So I want you to answer this question, ladies and gentlemen, from a sports perspective. Asshole, a self-centered moron, thundering egotist, overrated, cantankerous, babyish, foolish, self-centered, moronic, all the factors together. All in a very short man with a short fuse, with a short brain. I am no fan of this guy, and revisionist history is beautiful. Earl Weaver didn't want the Toronto Blue Jays in the AL, especially AL East. He even intentionally lost the game over his concerns about a tarp at Old Exhibition Stadium, my old stomping grounds in Toronto. So today we're not going to be talking about the successes of Earl Weaver. We're going to be talking about his attitude towards baseball. Now, I'm a baseball fan and a person who likes baseball. The referees and umpires can be manipulated, but he can't be harangued and attacked just because you can. Now, according to multiple sources, and from what I saw, he never got along with umpires. Jim Palmer, his antithesis, because he once said Palmer was a moron, and Palmer said it takes one to know one, described the relationship. Earl Weaver hated umpires with every fiber of his win or die being. He yelled at them, he screamed in their faces, he kicked dirt on them, he tore up rule books, he taunted and tortured them. Weaver was ejected from games at least 91 times during the regular season. Actually, official reports could be as high as 98, and several more times during postseason play. He was ejected from both games of a doubleheader 3 times. He was twice ejected from games before it even started, both times by Ron Luciano. That's my hero of the week. Luciano alone ejected him from all 4 games of minor league series and 8 games in the majors. Sometimes, even after Weaver had been thrown out of a game, he would phone the Oriole dugout to tell the coaches what moves to make. He also received 4 multiple game suspensions. He is well known for the humor that often accompanies ejections. During one particular tirade with an umpire, Weaver headed to the dugout screaming, "I'm going to check the rule book on that," to which the umpire replied, "Here, use mine." Weaver shot back, "That's no good, I can't read Braille, ha 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 ha." He once told an umpire that he could appear on What's My Line wearing his mask, chest protector, holding his ball strike indicator, and still nobody guessed he was an umpire. Now, a little bit of trivia. The first game of the week ever broadcast from Toronto included Howard Cosell, Al Michaels, and Earl Weaver. So I'm in the parking lot waiting the game to start. I see Al Michaels go in. I see Howard Cosell go in because I accidentally touched his limo and Cosell threatens to have me arrested. But no sign of Earl Weaver. I guess during the game in the parking lot, or allegedly at the local restaurant, he got death threats. And one guy said, if Weaver shows up in the parking lot, I'm going to fucking kill him. Because the Blue Jays and the Orioles never got along because Weaver didn't want us in the league. Now, Weaver had a penchant for kicking dirt on umpires and for turning his cap backwards whenever he sparred with umpires in order to get as close to them as possible without actually touching them. His rivalry with Luciano was legendary to the point where the AL rearranged umpiring schedules for an entire year so that Luciano would not work Orioles games. A year later, on August 26, 1979, in the third inning of the opener of an Orioles-White Sox doubleheader at Comiskey, he ejected Weaver, who then publicly questioned Luciano's integrity and received a 3-game suspension. He once derisively called Luciano one of the few umpires that people have paid their way into their park to see. Now, Marty Springstead was one of Weaver's least favorite umpires. On September 15, 1977, in Toronto, the famous incident, Weaver asked Springstead to have a tarp covering the Toronto Blue Jays bullpen area removed. The tarp was weighted down by bricks, and Earl argued his left fielder could be injured if he ran into the bricks while chasing a foul ball. When the umpire refused to order the Blue Jays to move the tarp, he pulled the Orioles off the field. Now, this may have cost them the 1977 AL East title because they were heavy in the pennant race, and you notice by the standings, they only were out 2 games, and at the end, were only out 2 games. You do the math on that, he cost them a fucking division title, maybe directly and indirectly. Now, when the umpire declared a forfeit, this was the only one in Orioles history. On another famous occasion in Cleveland, he stormed to the dugout and returned to the field with a rule book in his pocket. "Don't take that book out or you're out of here," Springsteen warned. He pulled it out anyway and was ejected. After the game, Weaver said to Springstead, "He's a terrific guy, he's just not a very good umpire." Now, one of Weaver's most infamous tirades, "You're always trying to fuck us." What are you doing, Earl? You only think you're fucking up his World Series. This came on September 17, 1980, and a game against the Tigers. Now this video is throughout YouTube, and go watch it because it has to be seen to believe. First base umpire Bill Haller, one of my personal heroes, was wearing a microphone for a documentary in the daily life of an MLB umpire. He called a balk on Oriole pitcher Mike Flanagan. Weaver charged out of the dugout and began screaming at hollering at Haller, who was already angry at Weaver for publicly questioning his integrity by suggesting he be prohibited from working Tigers games in '72 because his brother was the Tigers' backup catcher at the time. After he was ejected, he launched a profanity-filled argument in which he accused Haller of blatantly calling the game out of the Orioles' favor. He said, "You're just here to fuck us." He also accused Haller of poking him in the chest, and after Haller denied doing so, they called each other liars. "You're a liar, Earl. You're a liar, Earl." And, he didn't touch Weaver. If he did, I think he would clock him. Now, his contempt for umpires was often mutual. One night in '73, Weaver threw his cap to the ground and began a vehement argument with Luciano. Luciano's crew mate, Don Denkinger, walked over to Weaver's cap, stepped on it with the sharp cleats of both shoes, and slowly twisted back and forth. Now, I don't know if I'm going to heaven or not, but if I go to hell, the first thing I'm going to do is find Earl Weaver, because I think a lot of people think he's heading to hell, especially Blue Jay fans. This is serious with us in Canada. Okay, he tried to humiliate us in '77 because Exhibition Stadium wasn't the best stadium in the world, but, that's a Canadian thing. Sometimes use bricks to hold down certain things. Is Weaver think he's going to come to another country and tell us how to act? He didn't want us in the league in the first place, and he's showing up telling us how to run the park. Say like Samuel L. Jackson. No, it's almost like the guy in the Chasing Amy, the Black Rage. Well, isn't that true? They all want us to be white. And he probably said, well, they all should be Orioles fans because, only a fan should be an Oriole. They can't be having Toronto. We'll take away our fans. Earl Weaver, a bad perm when he was announcing, a bad attitude. Don Zimmer, God bless him, okay? Zimmer won, he overachieved, okay? I have to give him what it says. He had teams that overachieved. Earl Weaver was given godlike powers. He had the best starting staff. He had Brooks Robinson, all the great Orioles players. He fucked up World Series, okay? He fucked up in '71. He fucked up in '69. He fucked up in '79. He was ahead, 3-1. What can you do? I basically, I haven't wanted to do an Earl Weaver podcast, but I'm seeing certain people trying to talk revisionist history, saying, he was a great manager and whatever. To me, a great manager of that era, Sparky Anderson, Dick Williams, Billy Martin, love him or hate him, overachieved in Minnesota, overachieved in Detroit, overachieved in Texas, technically overachieved with the Yankees. '76, with Reggie Jackson, he made it to the fucking World Series. And the A's in the early '80s, Billy Ball, okay? He had his problems, but he was a great manager. He didn't fuck up seasons because even in '85, he should have won at least a wild card, but it was done back there. Earl Weaver was bad for baseball. If you're a young kid watching baseball, you were seeing the way Earl Weaver was going on in the great AL East of the '70s. Cleveland would come in. The Cleveland manager would never freak out. The Boston manager would never freak out. The Yankees manager would never freak out, okay? All the great managers of the AL East. He was a cancer, and the day he died, I rose a glass and I said, thank you, God, for getting rid of this guy. I don't hate him. Just people like that should never existed in the first place. You took a job away from maybe somebody in the Baltimore system could have done a better job, like Altobelli or, maybe Brooks Robinson would have been manager, okay? I don't see the benefit of even thinking Earl Weaver was good for baseball. He was terrible for baseball. Just like Howard Cosell announcing was terrible for baseball. Howard Cosell called Willie McGee ET. He frigged up the Jackson trio home run calls in Game 6 and '77. He was terrible. All I'm saying, ladies and gentlemen, back away from the Baltimore bar and ask the other people. The true baseball fans are the teams like Canada has one Canadian. Canada's team is the Blue Jays. We know everything about the AL East and the other teams. It was a disgrace. And I was at that game in '83, and there was a guy there still talking. He was looking towards, somebody was warming up in the bullpen. He said, "Oh, that's Weaver's corner." And the other woman said, "What do you mean Weaver's corner?" He said, "That's what he was mad about because he would leave the tarp on until they were ready to pitch, right? Even in like it's a non-rain days. That was a thing in Toronto. That was part of it, right? And to give up a game in the middle of a pennant race, if you really love these teams so much, just eat shit and keep your mouth shut. This wasn't a home game. This was a road game. Are you telling me you're going to go to the Hartford Whalers in the mid '80s and tell them not to play their gold song if you're a coach of the Montreal Canes, and then bring your players off the ice? If you're going to go to Edmonton during their playoff runs and tell them not to play still to one, and you're going to leave in the middle of an NHL playoff game? Of course not. Ego cannot be a part of baseball. It's a simple game. You hit the ball, you throw the ball, you catch the ball. There's no lollygagging or gagging around the field. Just go to your position and play good defense and come. And if you strike out, don't insult the umpire, and basically, and maybe go to the catcher and say, "How are my wife and kids doing?" Just want to check in. Say like Thurman Munson, and it's a fastball. When you talk to me, be kind. So, ladies and gentlemen, the story of the day: award-winning 41-year-old veteran journalist thinks Earl Weaver is rotting in hell, and he hopes he's rotting in hell. That's not an understatement. I'm hoping. And I'm sorry if the Weaver family would be offended by that, but your relative insulted us. He started it. He said on the record in 1976, "I don't want Toronto in the AL East. I don't want a bunch of Canadians in the league. I want them in the National League because we're trying to get in San Francisco, but he gave us AL East." He said that. I read the article. Okay? Maybe you didn't read the States because nobody knows anything about Canada. When Earl Weaver used to come to Exhibition Stadium, they would chant something, and I'm still trying to get the translation. I think it was Portuguese or Italian because they have a great Portuguese-Italian community in Greater Toronto. Something about like a sausage or a fried sausage. Anyway, if anybody's at the games, because I was asking what he was chanting against George Brett the game was at. Oh, that's an old Earl Weaver chant. I said, "What does it mean?" Well, he said, "Someone looks like a sausage." I don't know what it means. Anyway, I guess in certain languages, if you call someone a sausage, it's a big insult. Sort of like, anyway. Well, yeah, there's an expression in French called a grand mal. He's a big problem. That's what Earl Weaver was. So if you like what we're doing here with our baseball podcast, where honesty is given to you from a person who's won more awards than you'll ever probably win, let us know to like, comment, subscribe, or share. Bye.